Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the League of Inches podcast. Season reviews, the Gold Coast Titans today. Myself and Trav along for the ride for this one. And I guess for the Titans, it's worth saying a disappointing year. A season at the start that had a bit of hype around it in terms of the players there, the Des Hasler era. They finished in 14th position on 22 points, 8 wins, 16 losses, minus 168 points differential, which I always look at, and I think that says a lot about your season when you've got like a minus, and that sort of just shows you sort of where the club was at and that sort of thing. So got Trav here. Let's open this up straight away again, how we always start things. Just when I mentioned the Gold Coast Titans 2024 season, what's hitting you in the face straight away?
It's a funny question, right? So here, can I answer back with a question? When you talk about, so I've got a question. So when we talk about the Titans, what do you know about the Titans, right? What's one thing that you would say about the Titans?
They've got some good young talent there in that team, but they're just
in terms of game style. Then I know where you're going to go. In terms of game style, what would you say? What do you think about the Titans? The first thing that might come off your head. I'll be surprised if you say something different.
They want to score points, and then
they're
they don't
attacking,
want to defend.
Right? They're attacking. Yeah. They want to score points. They're attacking. Do you want some stats?
Go ahead.
488 points for. Atrocious. Right. Compared to last year, 527 points for. They were worse this year. 14th at 8 and 6 wins and losses. 14th last year. So they were the same position, 14th. Last year, 9 and 5. This year, 8 and 6. Points for this year, 488. Points for last year, 527. They were 14th in the league for points, 14th for line breaks, 8th for tackle busts, 9th for meters, 11th for offloads, 13th for tackles in opposition, 20th. They were the worst team for errors. Their completion rate was the best in the competition at 82%. We all talk about how good they are as an attacking team, yet their stats are just freaking atrocious. They had 10 games, Joel. They had 10 games. We talk about this as an attacking team. They had 10 games where they didn't even score 18 points. Like they don't have that. They don't have an identity. Like they want to have their identity is I'm an attacking team and we can't play defense. We know that. Well, they can't freaking do either because they allowed 656 points. They were it was the 4th worst defense in the competition. They cannot do either. And I think this year, all I keep hearing is excuses. That's all I keep hearing. That's all I hear, right? It's excuses. Oh, Tino got injured in the first 2 games. Hang on. Have you had a look at the other 16 teams in the competition? Guess what? They all had freaking injuries. It's just, they're a team full of excuses and a team full of disappointment.
This will be an interesting episode, I feel like, because they're like I word is going to come up a lot. We're going to talk about the I word identity. We're going to talk about the E word. We're going to talk about excuses as a club, and we'll talk about this a bit more, where they're at the time in terms of the future and having now the Dolphins in Queensland, having the Broncos starting to breathe a little bit more fire in terms of the Maguire signing and with their young stars coming through. There's a really interesting time now in Southeast Queensland and perhaps another team on the horizon, depending on what happens with the growth of the game and where they go with that. But I look straight away to go back into this season in terms of the start of their year. They didn't have their first win until round 8. Any team that does that, they've done well to avoid the wooden spoon, to be honest with you. They've done extremely well to get themselves off the bottom of the ladder and not finish last this year. Their start of the year was absolutely dreadful. That they were absolutely horrible. And I know this becomes the Des Hasler era, and there's a lot of excitement around the Des Hasler era. I said from the start, there also should be a lot of caution because let's not kid ourselves. The Des Hasler era of coaching for the last couple of years, whether it was at Manly, the back half of the Dogs, he's got this aura about getting the job done, but then leaving clubs in a disaster, not having good sets, not setting clubs up well financially in terms of the salary cap and things like that. But this is always going to take some time. Learning the Des Hasler and having this playing group, as you've rightly said, Trav, they've been a very attacking-based football club for some time. There's been so many calls for this club to become a more rounded football team in terms of enjoying the defense side of things, that Des was probably a welcomed addition. But I was never too sure of how this combination would come together and how well it would come together and how long it would take. It obviously has taken a long time because if we're going off the back half of this year as well, the losses started to come back and they didn't win a game since round 22 of the year. So they started the year and ended the year basically in the same way, just losing. And that becomes an addiction in a way. Losing football games can be addictive because you forget how to win. You forget what is needed to win. And I've finished the first year of the Des Hasler era and I'm just scratching my head. I don't know what's happened or what's come of this year in terms of what has Des brought to the club and what does the club learn? What are they as an individual, as a team? And as you said, the identity of the Gold Coast Titans, I got no idea. I don't even know what to say next because are they in a better position than this time 12 months ago? No, I don't think they are. I'm concerned. I'm worried. I don't know if this has worked exactly how they thought it would work already.
I will have a disagreement with you here, but I'm very much so on the agreement of everything you've said, and you sort of backed up what I was saying too. They've got no identity. We don't know where they're at. They want to pride themselves on being an attacking team, but as I said, their attacking stats are atrocious. It went backwards from 2023 to 2024. The first 6 games, they didn't just lose. They freaking got belted. They got belted by 24 points to the Dragons. They got belted by the Bulldogs 32-0. They got belted by the Dolphins by 30-14. They got belted by the Cowboys 35-22. Then they lost by 1 point to the Raiders. Then they lost to Manly by 4. And then they go and beat the Warriors. And then that's the sort of start of where they win 3 out of the next 5. And then they sort of preyed on the teams in Origin period where they win 5 of 8. So, as you said, they've got no identity. The thing is, and what I disagree with is, are they in a better stance than they were last year? Shit, yeah, they are. I think they were able to unleash some really good players that really helped them. And I think putting Campbell into the 5'8" spot was enormous for them, and that's where he has to play. I think Keeney has shown as a fullback he's their next man. He's that man. I think the signing of Regan Campbell-Gillard is a good one. Odd, but I still think it's good, and there's still a better team for that. So I disagree in terms of the difference in the last 12 months. I also have to disagree in terms of that, in that whilst we're all sitting here going, what is the Desley Hasler stamp? What does he put on there? Where is the Desi feel? I still think it's better than what it was 12 months ago. Like even then at the end of last year, we all sat there going just having absolutely no questions like this. I would love to have done this podcast 12 months ago because I don't reckon we'd have said much. Right now we're sitting here asking questions because we know we looked at their list. We can look at what they're at. We know what's coming in. We know what they were able to unleash this year. And so I think there is definitely a better standing and a better future.
I guess a lot of it is frustration because I'm not a Gold Coast Titans fan. I live in the area. I go to a couple of games every year just because I love watching live football. So I think the stadium is fantastic. The supporter group, they don't have a large one, but what they're trying to achieve there, I can respect. Yep. And I want the area to get a lot more behind this team because I think the NRL and rugby league in general is growing in the Gold Coast area in terms of the junior side of the game, and it's great to see. They just need to find the identity. They need to find what they stand for as a club, grab it, and go, because does Des have the same morals as what the Titans are going to achieve? That's still out. We're not too sure how this is going to work still. It's been 12 months, and I don't know where it's going to – I understand what you're saying in terms of some of these players and the great sort of players they're going to be and the talent they've got. But that's never been an issue for the Titans. I feel like that over time they've always had 3, 4, 5 young players who they've gone, this is the exciting part of our game moving forward and for the club. and keeping and holding on to those players has always been the issue for him, and making sure they can blood him into the team to fit perfectly. Whether they can do that again, I'm not too sure, because we've had these conversations, I feel like, so many times over the years about the Titans and about what they can do. Keeney's going to be a freak, and it's part of what I've got written down. We can go into it. Is 3 doesn't go into 1. And what I mean by that is Jaden Campbell, Brimson, and Keeney are all preferred fullbacks. Jaden Campbell has done a remarkable job transitioning to 5'8", and that's his position now for mine moving forward. He will be a 5'8", and he's showed that he's a damn good 5'8". I've actually got Keeney as my preferred fullback option moving forward, and I think he was the best there this year for the Titans. Brimson, I've got no idea what to do with Brimson, because I look and people go, oh, he'll go into the center role. That's fine. I'm sorry to say, it hasn't worked. It has not worked him at center. It just has, like, he's had maybe patches of a good moment and a decent game, but whether it's because his body hasn't been able to evolve into this modern era, I'm not too sure what it is. Injuries, you can't help that. I don't know where Brimson's fitting into this team, and people are out there, like I know Matty Johnson's been huge on him moving into maybe like a lock forward role, but I look at Chris Wren, I go, he killed it this year. He's, for mine, he's the lock forward for the Titans moving forward with the way the modern game is and how they're sort of evolving. It's 3 into 1 doesn't work, Trav. It simply does not work. No matter how you try, 3 does not go into 1.
No, it doesn't. I learned that in prep.
Exactly.
It doesn't work, right? And you're right. I think they were lucky. They were lucky that Campbell had to go to 5'8", and Campbell showed that he's their player for 5'8". So just lock him in and sit him there, right? This is your team as a 5'8" for the next 12 months. Go and do it, or however long. But we're not going to move you around. The only thing that's going to adjust, that's going to happen, is if you get injured. Otherwise, you're our 5'8". Right, that's what they need to say to him. They need to go back and go to Keeney and say, Keeney, you're our fullback. Give him. I said that through this year. Like, I said that halfway through the year. They've unlocked Keeney. Keeney's this guy. They need to just give him the keys and say, off we go. You know, and they needed to do it for the rest of that year, and they didn't. About the midway through, they ended up dropping him, or I think he got injured. Whatever happened, but he didn't play a couple of games in the middle there. And then he ended up getting back into it and showed again that he's their fullback, man. He's a star. And then what he was able to do in the international game just showed that he's there. Like, he has to be their fullback. So the question is what they do with Brimson. And I actually think, look, Brimson's done, unfortunately, and I bloody love him. Like, and everyone does, and they should. He's a good dude. So he's a very good dude. He's a good leader in the club. You never hear anything bad about him. He's played Origin, and he could still play Origin if he was able to stay healthy. But he's done. I think what they need to do with Brimson is go, Brimson, you're not going to play in our halves. You're not going to play as a fullback. Here's your 2 spots. I still think he could be a center. I don't think he's been given that enough. I don't think he's played enough and to be consistent enough. I think he might have 1 or 2 games and he's been injured. Like, I'd love to know how many actual games he's played at center and just sat there for a long period of time. So I don't think he's done that, but I don't think his body also is the spot. It will allow him to do that. So that's the risk you've got to take, because you're paying this man to play for you. The other thing that I would do is I would turn him into, I actually think he would be to me, the best 14 in the game is Tyron Wishart. I reckon Brimson would be the best 14 in the competition if they just said, you're at 14, week in, week out, off you go. Play that spot. And you plug holes where we need you. And if one gets injured or someone's got a HIA, you can go on the wing, you can go into here, you can do that, because I think he could. But I think he could be the best 14 in the game.
It's interesting. I think as a business decision, the best way to handle this situation is you allow Brimson, you give him permission to talk to other clubs, because Keeney's their long-term fullback. They've got some good young talent coming through in the halves where they don't need Brimson there. There's a player that I'll talk about shortly who's just defying logic when it comes to his body and continues to be the glue that holds his team together. Campbell's the 5'8". We've established that for years to come. So there's your 2 guys that Brimson he's on a decent wicket there. He's on some good money. Can you have that as your 14? I don't think so. As much as he would, I agree, he would be a phenomenal 14, but is he going to take a pay cut to stay at that club? And I don't think so. Maybe you go to him, let's go and have a look. Not going to say we're going to get rid of you, but I'll let you go and have a look at what can happen there. It'll help the club out. It'll help you out to hopefully get consistent game time. If you see yourself as a fullback still, which he probably does, he probably thinks he can handle it. As you said, if he can put or string together consecutive games, he can still be up there with one of the good fullbacks of the game. There's no questioning that. Just that he can't do it. And as a club, you've got to start to hold yourself for something and say, we need to put that money elsewhere. I don't know where that is because I look at the team and on paper, we continue to say how good this team can be on paper. Where else can they put the money? That's the thing. It's a weird one because they've got
RCG.
Yeah, they've got their forwards. I feel like sorted. They've got Fodawaker, they've got Fafita, they've got RCG, they've got Tino. There's a number of players there. They got Cleese Haas, who's done some good things this year and looks like he's ready to go to that next level. Their backline has got talent galore. You've got Jojo Fafita. You've got Alofia Campiera. I've already mentioned Keeney. You've got Kelly, who continues to be a pretty consistent centre year in, year out for him. I'm forgetting a couple of others for sure, but there's definitely some good young. Semi. It doesn't stop. Like Bo Firma can do a job in the center or on the edge wherever he is needed. So it's a weird one because it's not like I see them needing to go out to the market to grab someone. Like I don't know what's going to happen there, but just feels like use your money maybe to just help some of these younger guys coming through, keep them and go with there because I've got no doubt Keeney's going to need an upgrade very, very shortly to keep him away from some of these other clubs. So it'd be interesting what will happen. I'm very keen to see. But one person I want to give a big shout out to is Kieran Foran, who I thought has been another very, very good, consistent year. And he's the guy defying logic. His body seems like it's been shot for years now, but he turns up week in, week out, keeps this team together in a way to be somewhat competitive. We've spoken about how they've been this year and it hasn't been great, but the games that they've won and go back and look at it, Foran's been instrumental in pretty much all those wins. And he's just the ultra professional player. And just a shout out to him. I just think he's been a really, really good, solid player. He obviously has the relationship there with Des Hasler, and that works quite well for them. And what probably Des is trying to bring to this club, he can help that. But yeah, I just think Foran this year, obviously doesn't get the plaudits that some of the Hugheses, the Clearys, and the like get, and probably rightly so. But I just think for this club, he is exactly what they need at the moment.
Yeah. Can I just mention something funny about Kieran Foran? Why on the NRL list, you go through the whole list and he's not listed?
NRL, please answer.
Yeah, NRL app does not have Kieran Foran in their Gold Coast Titans list. So,
wow.
Don't know. Maybe I'm just reading into stuff, getting into the media hype of content, seeking content. I've scrolled through before the podcast started, and I've scrolled through now, and I can't find. Well, I can if I go and Google some other stuff. But yeah, he's not on the NRL app. But he was good. I actually, whilst he was good, he's a good leader. I think, unfortunately, he was a very big key player in the downfall of David Fafita this year. And so I guess you've got to weigh the situation. You've got to take the good with the bad. And I'm wondering whether I would much rather a Fafita doing what he could do and not have Foran. So as good as I was and as a leader head of what Foran did, and we've got appreciation because this is an old fella who's just going out and about. I'm not sure he was positive, had an overall positive effect on the club in terms of the way players were playing. Clearly, he's a very good leader. Clearly, he's good for that aspect of stuff and development. But yeah, in terms of overall player development, I think I'm struggling to find positives.
It's a good segue because I do want to talk about David Fafita's season and how you sort of rate it and where you see it. I think it was a bit of a disappointing one, to be brutally honest with you. I don't think he met what we've seen David Fafita do in the past, and hence why he lost his State of Origin jersey, and that had a lot of uproar. And I think we wanted him chosen on potential, and we knew what he could bring. But credit to Billy. He made the decision. It ended up being the right decision because Fafita just wasn't himself this year. And I don't think we've seen, whether we talk Supercoach, whether we talk NRL, he wasn't there. Like, it wasn't a David Fafita season.
It wasn't. Hey, like, it was very disappointing. And you know, he took the money. Like, you know, so did David Fafita have a good couple of years because he knew he was coming in for a contract, and now he's just got the money, and it's like, yep, cool. Okay. I hope that's not the case, but that's what it kind of feels like. Yeah, it's disappointing, and I'm disappointed, and that's a big key. I don't actually think I can turn around and say David Fafita was bad because Tino's injury affected him or anything like that. I don't play into that. I don't think Tino would have made him a better player this year. I don't think Foran helped him either. I think Foran went the other way, looked the other pass, looked the opposite way, or looked past him and skipped him too many times and all those sorts of things. But so I don't think Foran was a really good thing for him. But a player like him, as good as he is, you got to put yourself into better positions to be able to do that, and he didn't. And I actually think for his talent and what he had, he was this is a harsh word, but I actually think he was really poor this year. But you know. It's because we know what he can do. It's because we know how he's played, like what he did last year and the year before. Like, we know what Fafita can do, so we rate him in a harsher light. And I just think he disappeared.
I don't want to be too harsh on the bloke, but I think that gets to a point now, and he's getting more and more experience. He's becoming one of those, I guess, age-wise, he's not, but player-wise and what he's achieved in the game, he's an experienced player. He has become an established player, one of the sort of elite sort of players in our game, and he needs to start accepting responsibility of the sort of player he is. And we always have the arguments, and we all know now the sort of player David Fafita is. But it gets to a point where you got to start realizing, and like, yeah, Tina was out. He needed to step up a bit more and be more of that leader on the field. Did he do that? No, that's a failure in my opinion. You've got to start learning to change your ways. Like, we look at Beau Fermor, for instance. He's been great this year. He's a great edge back rower, but when needed, he went to center and he played his role perfectly. He did a great job. Dave Fafita, for mine, chose a lot of lazy options consistently throughout the year. Like that pick up and bury himself into the try line. He did that way over the top this year. And I felt like that was a lazy option. Like, that wasn't, people and teams quickly worked out when he would do that. He'd jump into dummy half, bury himself in, and more times than not, wouldn't get the try, stop any momentum that the Titans had. And if I was one of the halves, I would have absolutely drilled him at the end of the game and gone, mate, this needs to stop. Like, give me the freaking ball. Like, let's establish what we've got going here, and let's give it to our exciting backline. We don't need you anymore to be demanding the ball every set or taking those little easy options, because you're better than that. You need to establish yourself now as a player and go, you know what? I've been this guy who can have that 8 or 9 runs a game, and that's really all I need to do, and that's a good game for me. You need to start being more than that. You're on the big dollars. You mean a lot more to this club than what you did when you first got there. It's time for Fafita to look at himself in the mirror and had a hard conversation with himself. He shouldn't need to have players do it. He shouldn't need to have Des do it. He needs to do it. He needs to become a bit more, work a little bit more. Like, yeah, he's not one of those Liam Martins or Crichtons who's going to do effort on effort. We know that. But work a bit more. You want to be that Queenslander. You want to be a rep player. Work a bit harder. Come on. Yeah. You're a first grader.
Yeah. He doesn't have to be those Liam Martins and that. That's not his game either. And he doesn't have to be. He just has to go and influence a game for 50 minutes and just and when the fact is that he can influence a game for 50 minutes and win you a game. Like, that's how bloody good he is. But unfortunately, this is what David Fafita does, right? When the contract's on, he turns up. When the contract's not, he doesn't. Like, he's got a reputation for that now, and yeah, he's got some big things to ask that he's got to put through his head. And I agree. I don't think the club should turn to him and say, "What the hell are you doing?" I think he needs to work it out now. He needs to turn around and go, "No, I'm getting paid. This is what I do." Because what he put up this year was rubbish. In my opinion.
Before we get to some of the questions that we do to end these episodes, one final one. Obviously, the Tino injury was huge. Like, we're not going to downplay that. That was their leader, their captain, one of the best forwards in the competition. If you lose him for the whole year and very early on, that's going to have an impact. We understand that. What I want to start to talk about and quickly mention is the Titans need to get over these excuses. as a club and as your identity, the excuses need to stop. Whether this happens and whether you lose a player like this, you've simply got to overcome it. As a playing group, as a club, you got to go, you know what? Instead of accepting this and go, all right, the season's written off after round 2, let's go and actually show people that what we've got. And the funny thing is, Chris Randall, who basically stepped into that position and became their lock for the year, had a really good year. He was really, really good. And for mine, he was probably one of their best players of the year. He didn't have that excuse, but it just felt like consistently, and whether it's this year or other years, as soon as a player is injured, goes down, a key player, and it's an excuse for the club to go, all right, we're not going to win. We're not going to do any good. And it's sort of, in a way, accepted. And I was expecting the Des Hasler era, that was going to get wiped. There was no excuses anymore. As a club, I don't care who it is. It's the next man up mentality. And we're getting these dubs. We're winning these football games. We're becoming a top 8 team. We're fighting for those wins. And we saw it in glimpses at little stages when they were beating the Broncos and stuff and those sorts of games. But I mentioned at the start of this podcast, you've got the Dolphins now establishing themselves as a team and building a really good fan base, building a really good football team there. You've got the Broncos who are, this year was a hiccup for them, but we all know the talent they've got at their disposal. They just need to put some right pieces in the right bits of the puzzle, and they'll explode. They'll be a scary, scary football team. Cowboys are a bit further away, so you don't have to talk about them as much, but if there's talk about they're still unsure what's happening with the Perth-based franchise, there could still be room for maybe like around that Ipswich area for that new NRL team. The Titans, I'm sorry to say, you need to quickly discover that identity side of things. You need to embrace the junior side of the game, and otherwise you're going to get left behind. And whether that means, once again, the Gold Coast franchise is busted, is done, I don't know. I hope not, because the game needs to really grow in this area of the country. But it's a weird one because it's another year we've finished where we've gone, geez, they've got a really good, like on paper, they've got some really good players. They should be a top 8 team, and they didn't go anywhere near it.
No, I agree with your rant. I agree with it 100%. I just, again, like it's that question of identity. Like it really is. They've got the potential to jump into the Logan region. You know, Logan's so close. It's a highway away from their stadium. With really good cultural depth of players that they can pickpocket or, pick and choose from. Gold Coast region's big enough as it is to be able to manage it. Like that, they lack an identity. They don't know what they have. They're hoping that Desi Hasler was the reason why how to fix that, I reckon. And at this point in time, he showed some potential of players, but hasn't really shown a game style or a plan. You look at the other clubs. You look at the Sharks coach, and you can see his name stamped all over that with the way that they played this year and what they've got. You look at the Bulldogs and what Serraldo did this year with that, and you can clearly see a stamp on there of Serraldo's influence. You can clearly see how the Dolphins were influenced by their coach in Bennett, and the stamp on that. You can clearly see how the Storm and Bellamy. You can clearly see the stamp on the way that some of these coaches are. What the hell has Desi done? They've lost an extra game this year. Their points for has dropped. Their stats across the board have dropped. All that I can see is that Desi was in the middle of the year, being able to go on a 3-5 run and a 5 out of 8 run, and then disappear the start and the end. That's all I can see. Plus a few decisions made in terms of where some players are going to go. So, I agree with you totally. They need to sort their shit out pretty quickly, because otherwise they're going to disappear very quickly, and that would be an absolute shame, because the Gold Coast is, the most famous, the most famous town in Australia. Sydney and Melbourne, everyone talks about it, but the Gold Coast is the holiday region. It's what all internationals, everyone knows that there's an opportunity there to really make a standpoint. So they've got to figure it out pretty quick.
100%. And look, lastly, we're not going to turn a blind eye. We know that it takes time to change clubs around. And you mentioned the Bulldogs. It didn't happen overnight. We understand that. But what we got to see early on from those clubs, like the Bulldogs, the identity was changing. There was things getting put into place to change that. We're just unsure if we've seen that this year, and we might be harsh again. Message the page, let us know your thoughts and where we've been wrong, or we're not always going to say we're right. We're just giving our opinions on this sort of stuff. So, getting the questions, your key moment of the year, Trav, for the Gold Coast Titans.
Key moment, I think, was, well, I've got a couple, but the Tino injury was a big key moment, unfortunately. But see, the reason why I'm saying it's a key moment is because he's the premier, the best FRF in the comp. I reckon he's better than AFB when he's playing. Just what he does. But he did it in the second round. So there's still 25 rounds to go. So there's an ability to be able to stand up. And as you said, Randall and that Mofo was pretty bloody good too. So he had a good year this year. So they was able to do that. I think that another key moment was the Anzac Day win. It was the first win out of the first 6. So that was a good win for them. Another key moment, 60-66 beat down of the Warriors. That's a cricket score. That's a really big that. But my biggest key moment is the 5 in a row that they lost at the end of the year.
Yeah, they were sort of on the edge there. People starting to go, oh, maybe we might see something here, and then it just completely fell away. For mine, the key moment, you mentioned it. I just think the Tino injury was a huge one. Their captain, there was all this talk about different era, the Des era, all that sort of stuff, and then to lose your captaincy, granted, it would have been a huge sort of the air getting let out of the balloon, but again, it should have been better to overcome that than they were. Surprise packet of the year. It's a different one because there's a few to give this to that point out. I'm just going to go Chris Randall. I just think he was sensational. He's obviously been at the Knights and stuff as a hooker and never really became he was never one of those players that stood out, wouldn't get any sort of awards and things like that. But for mine, he was sensational. We talk about the Tino injury and how much of an impact it had, how the game's evolving. I think that more versatile lock is the way to go moving forward. And the Titans look like they've got one of the better ones who have already adapted themselves to the game and how it's played. So, yeah, Chris Randall for mine, Trav.
Yeah, I like it. That's a good call. My surprise packet was David Fifita being so bad, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah. I like that.
What?
I like the way of twisting it. I was waiting. We haven't really had that this year so far in these ones, but I was waiting for someone to do it in the right time.
Yeah. He signed his contract. He was ready to go. I'm just very, very disappointed, especially with all the talk around that he was going to the Roosters. And what actually didn't he sign there?
Yeah,
he was going. So, and then to turn it around and come back and do what he did, it's a surprise to me. And yeah, I'm very disappointed with what he did with that stuff around. He stuffed 2 clubs around, let's be honest, and then didn't show up.
Who needs a big 2025?
The big 2025 has to go down to 2 things. Desi Hasler and how he manages that club and the decisions he needs to make around how he manages 3 into 1, like we said before. And then I also think he's got a big problem that he has to try and figure out as to what and where does the forward pack work and how do they work? Because he's got dudes all over the place who are all expecting minutes, or all expecting the ball. They're all hungry for it. He's got Tino coming back. He's got RCG coming in. He's got Fifita that he's got to figure out. He's got Mofo. He's got Randall. How do these forwards and what do they do through the middle is a really big question. And Desi Hasler's got a big job next year. And I think out of any coach in the competition, Desi Hasler's got the biggest and hardest job, and how he figures that spine out and what he does with that middle.
And obviously we'll talk about it more in the previous stuff, but I'm very concerned, to be honest, because I think in a way they've gone too heavy and too big in an era that we've just continually say is changing. And we've seen it firsthand with the likes of the Bulldogs and stuff with how they're playing and how much it's changed. Even the Storm, like Liero's gone to the lock now and just establishing more of that sort of mobility and people the forwards that can move a lot more around the field. So it's interesting, and be interesting if the way they've gone is the right way to do it. For mine, I locked in David Fifita. I just think he needs to bounce back. He needs to become that elite edge back role once again that we've seen him do in the past. We know he has it in him. He just needs to flick the switch. He just needs to say, I want to do it week in, week out, and not have excuses around why he hasn't done it, or it's too hard today, or they've come out and smashed me on the first run, so I'm going to go away from it. No, overcome that. You're elite. You're supposed to be that big Queenslander guy that doesn't stop, like be that man, be that player. So, yeah, David Fifita for mine. Player of the year. It was an interesting one. It's tough because, funnily enough, the players that for mine have stood out the most for them have been players that haven't necessarily played a lot this year. And I'm locking in. I just got to lock in Keeney. I just have to, just because of how much he changed the way their attack was. He actually became that attacking superstar for him, and he only played 15 games, and then he played an extra one on the bench, so 16 games all up. So it's a bit weird, but again, the season they had, the amount of losses that they had, they didn't play great either. Like, even players that played a lot more games wasn't necessarily doing much. So for mine, Keeney, he ended up playing for the Kiwis as well at the end of the year. I just think he was sensational when he came in, and in those three players that we've spoken about, with three doesn't go into one, to overcome those two so quickly and become the established fullback for that team shows to me you've had a remarkable year. So Keanu Keeney for mine. Trav?
Don't hate it. Don't like it. I really like Keeney, though, and he had a good year. He's not the player of the year, though. And I think he's the fullback of the future, though. So I can't wait to see what he did and what he does. I found it really hard to distinguish between these two for player of the year, or three, sorry. I found it really hard to distinguish between Randall, as you said, because of what he had to do and how he played. I found it really hard to distinguish between these two particularly, though. Cam Pereira and Brian Kelly. Like, Brian Kelly's not your sexy center, but he just does. He's there every week, plays hard. He scores, or he try assists. He plays his tackles. He doesn't complain. He leads that group. Like, he's a good player. He's not your sexy center and all that sort of stuff, but he's a good dude. But I ended up giving a slight edge to Cam Pereira because he 24 tries this year. And look, whilst that's, the 24 tries speaks a lot, he still averaged 118 meters a game, which is pretty good for a winger. He tackles made, he only made 89 for the year, but again, that's a winger. Like, they don't tackle a lot as it is in the first place. 27 line breaks, 59 tackle breaks. Like, yeah, he had a really good year, and I reckon he was their player of the year in a pretty substandard year across the board.
Very well summed up. I agree with you. A little shout out there for both Fermor as well, who I think was a bit of a underrated player for him this year. Came back from that ACL, which players always takes a bit of time to come back from, and he filled in a couple of positions, and I thought he was really good this year. That's it for the Gold Coast Titans. I guess a bit harsh, a bit more firm, I guess, around some of the other teams they've done more recently. But again, if you're finishing down low, you're having those sorts of seasons. We've always said it here. We'll call it as it is. We'll call a spade, and harsh treatment sometimes is warranted. So hopefully they bounce back for their fans. As we said, we want them to be a successful team in this competition, and hopefully they're the guys in charge of them are seeing this. They know the pressure that's on, and 2025 is huge for the Gold Coast Titans.
So it's time.